The goal of this conversation should be, as I mentioned before, to inspire other people and to explain them how it is to attend a live class one-on-one and having the pressure of the live on YouTube, and also to show your English journey. And as a matter of fact, I interviewed Zdenek before about his experience being a teacher and giving a live lesson. And now, this time, I want to see the learner's perspective, right? And also, Zdenek explained what the dogme approach is. Do you know what the dogme approach is?
Yes, I know. He also explained it to me, and I find this method very interesting. I didn't know about this type of the teaching because, it's a very peculiar way of teaching. But I find it very useful, especially for upper intermediate, let's say, or advanced students. Maybe it's more difficult with less advanced students.
Yes.
But it also depends on the teacher. He's very good at that. And I think this method relies a lot on the teacher because it's a normal conversation. It's like two friends talking,
Yeah.
but he's doing that. But at the same time, the teacher has to take notes, be aware of the mistakes, to correct later on. Later on, he corrects the student. So it's very demanding from the teacher's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to that, he is doing it live. So there comes an additional component to it because there is a lot of pressure maybe on the student side. So first, why exactly did you attend the live English lesson?
Well, it was like a challenge also for me. I don't learn English in, let's say, in a conventional way because I did learn many years ago. I learned my grammar, the basics, and then at work I started using English. So I reached a pretty decent level. I was able to communicate, to talk about anything. I was pretty confident using English on a daily basis. But it was 2014 when I quit that job. So since then, and I'm talking about 8 years ago now, so it's a long time since I don't need English anymore at work, so, and neither on my daily life, but I love the language. So 2 or 3 years ago, I was forgetting what I knew about English. My English became rusty and I couldn't even talk to hold a normal conversation to not to like this type, and I was a bit ashamed that I was losing my English or what was getting worse and worse, that. So I thought I have to do something. So I became a student again, let's say, but a very, as I told you, a very unique and peculiar student because I don't want to learn grammar again, or at least not with grammar books because it's boring. I don't. So I try to incorporate English on my life again, to do things in English. For instance, my main input is reading. I love reading, so I'm always reading 2 or 3 books at the time. So I try that one of them at least to be a book in English, and also this type of things, podcast, and I try to listen to podcasts in English. I love the next podcast. I'm also your listener, Daniel. I listen to your podcast from time to time. So that's what I do. And Zdenek invited me to these live lessons, and I find it very challenging because that's what I lack. I lack of sometimes of fluency, and it's very good. I was very happy at the end of those lessons because it's a natural way, let's say, to learn English. And that's what I right now looking for, not for an, doing it as natural as possible.
Yeah, and I remember that your very first live English lesson with Zdenek, at the beginning you said that you preferred to be hidden in the shadows usually. So
Yeah.
in the sense that usually you don't like it to be in a live YouTube video. And I thought this was hilarious because nevertheless you went out of your comfort zone in order to improve your English, which is really cool. And also what I found really cool is that you said that in Spain that the people are outgoing. They really like to talk a lot, and that sometimes for you it's difficult because in English you don't have the same level as in Spanish. And you even said that you are not good in English, but I don't understand why, because I think sometimes you are beating yourself up a little bit. Don't you think?
Well, maybe I have too high expectations, I told Zen that because as an outgoing person who enjoy talking to people and chatting, that kind of thing, in English is a bit uncomfortable for me because I feel like a 5-year-old boy, I want to express so many things and I want to, when I talk to someone, I want to be myself. And this is my journey right now. I'm trying to be myself in English. I'm not at that level yet. I myself in Spanish. In Spanish, I talk to friends and I don't have any problem to make jokes, to be as I am. But in English, it's difficult to do that. So I feel that I'm a different person. I'm maybe more boring person than Spanish and but I try to take some risks but risks means errors, sometimes mistakes. But I try mm, mm, as you said, to get out of my comfort zone, despite it may mean that I'm going to make errors or mistakes. But
Absolutely.
I don't care about mistakes anymore.
I think this is really crucial when it comes to learning a language. We should not take ourselves too seriously. And let's take a look what Zdenek said in this lesson when you were beating yourself up. He said,
You're very fluent, that's the first thing. You rarely make mistakes, occasionally perhaps, but maybe when it comes to pronunciation, but your grammar seems spot on.
Was spot on. What a beautiful phrasal verb. Yeah.
yes,
He said I rarely make mistakes. Well, I don't know.
exactly.
Sometimes you aren't aware of the mistake, but it isn't all the mistakes. Maybe I was afraid of getting stuck because I'm very talkative. I also, when I start talking, I can't stop. Maybe it's a problem I have, but when I get stuck and there's a specific word that I'm looking for, it doesn't come, it's a bit frustrating. That it's also that feeling of, but I try to overcome all of this,
Yeah, but I mean, you are not at all an introvert person, I assume. You are outgoing, you really like to talk a lot, and you're not scared of making mistakes. So this is a huge advantage for you when it comes to learn English because, yeah, the more we talk, the better we will become. So this is a huge advantage because I think many students, they are afraid to get involved in a conversation, and that's the point when they get stuck. Don't you think?
Yeah, I agree, Daniel. I think that you need to switch off your editor or your
Yeah.
to be so conscious about your mistakes. I agree. It's something that every learner have to get rid of when starting, or if you want to improve your skills and practice. Because I think in the end it's a question of practice. All comes to practice much as you can, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, we shouldn't strive for perfectionism, maybe, because let's take a look what you've said.
And I think I would never say that. Now I master the English language. I don't need to improve anymore. I don't visualize that day because I've been learning English for a lot of years and it keeps improving. I keep on learning new things almost every day.
And I think this is very important to accept that we cannot be perfect.
Yeah, I agree, Daniel. This is too much to this goal to be perfect, to talk like a native speaker or something like that. It's too much to. We shouldn't aim for that. It's and by the way, why? I don't think I would ever need such level of perfection unless I want to work, I don't know, like a translator or something like that. But it isn't the case. I want English to get by, to talk to friends, to that kind of thing. Even at work, I use English at work, and I didn't need that level at all. I usually talk to other non-native English speakers. So we were talking shop, we were talking about our industry. So we knew the vocabulary. So we didn't need to speak perfect English even at work. So I don't think I would never be a C2 or something like that. But of course, if a specific student, this is his goal, this is what you want, go for it.
I think even if you or I could reach a C2, that doesn't mean that we are perfect, because it's just not possible. Even people in their mother tongue, they are not perfect. And at this point, I remember something that Zdenek said in the same life lesson. And this was astonishing to me as well, because Zdenek, he's talking in English all the time, or very often. So sometimes he doesn't speak in his own language. But let's take a closer look what he said exactly.
And you know what I realized? I realized that I really struggle to express myself in Czech. That's because most of my time I speak English. So I think it's even possible to just forget your native tongue to some extent, and you just need to keep using it. You know, that's it. You just need to keep using. That's with English. Yeah, you need to keep going, keep using it. At no point can you think that's it. You are done. This is your finish line. There's no finish line. Yeah,
and obviously he was neglecting his mother tongue, and then he had a struggle in speaking in his mother tongue, or maybe he forgot about a word, or I don't know the details, but it shows to us that we shouldn't beat ourselves up, because sometimes I don't speak English 2 months or 3 months, and so then it's natural that we cannot express ourselves equally as someone who is living in the UK, for example. And I find it really cool that, Zdenek is giving us tips, and he's really like very open, and he talks about such things. And I think these tips and tricks also can help us when we learn. It's not only about grammar and vocabulary, it's also about exchanging experiences that we have.
Yeah, I agree. I think he has the right attitude towards learning a second language. And
Yeah, absolutely.
it also did this thing of Zdenek forgetting about his mother tongue also tells us about that it's also, as we said, about practice. If he as an English teacher is spending most of the time speaking English, so sometimes he forgets about it's precisely what we experience. At least what I experience speaking English, that there's an important word in a specific phrase that I can't remember, and it destroyed my whole speech. Why did I even started this phrase? I can finish it. There's one word missing, and maybe it may happen in your mother tongue, but in Spanish, when I don't remember a specific word, since my vocabulary is, of course, much bigger, I can replace this word with a synonym. But it happens even in your mother tongue that from time to time you don't remember a specific word, and your fluency isn't that good, or you have to change the phrase in the middle of a phrase, or in the middle of a sentence, you have to change it so that it makes sense.
Were you nervous when you attended the very first life lesson?
Yes, I was. I'm not a shy person. I'm an outgoing person, a talkative person. I'm very nervous. I get nervous easily when I'm out of my comfort zone. I think to be outgoing, it's different. You may be nervous about, but I don't know. It's a different feeling. When I do something for the first time, it's very, I feel very nervous.
Because you never know what happens next in these life lessons. Because also there is no theme, right? So it's the dogme approach. So whatever language emerges, this is going to be the topic, and the focus is the student. And also sometimes there are people who are watching live, they can also write a comment or they can ask a question. I find this really interesting as well. So you have to cope with different things, right? So you have this thing that is new, you have the fact that it is live and that people can ask questions. There are many factors that are involved there. But on the other hand, I guess that this also gives you like an adrenaline push. So maybe you are more there, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I know, Daniel. Yeah, you have to cope with all that. Once you are out of your comfort zone, you have to survive. You are out there in the jungle, so you have to do your best. You don't have any you don't have any another choice. It's you.
Exactly.
You are there live, so that's do your best.
Exactly. And then I don't know if it was on the second or on the third live, but there was a time in which Zdenek used a spinning wheel. It was like a conversation wheel that you can like create a question, or let's say generate a question. So and then the system gives you whatever question it is, and then you have to answer it. But what do you felt about that?
Oh, horrible. I think it was the worst part. It was a nightmare because it was a spinning wheel with, I think, as far as I remember, there were two different wheels. The first one was, or maybe the first question. No, it was the same wheel, but with different questions. And the first one was a very philosophical question, very deep question. And I answered I gave him a stupid answer, I didn't know how to answer this question because it was too deep, and
Yeah.
I should have answered with more lightly, no? But I took it as as it came and tried to answer. Well, I gave a politically correct, stupid answer to this question. Is what thank God the second one was, as far as I remember, more light, and I tried to,
Yeah.
to do, let's say, a comeback and answer more like I am more, because again, it is the same thing to me that when while I was answering this question, I was thinking, well, this is not me. I'm behaving like another person. I'm answering like an exam, like a textbook, when they place you a question and you give the politically correct answer, the answer that the teacher would expect. But I'm not like that, I gave a stupid
Absolutely.
answer.
Yeah. I think the first question was something like, what would you do when you had 3 wishes or something like that? And yeah, you told Zdenek that hopefully the next questions will be more interesting. And I think we can see on that example that it is really important also that you can discuss really topics which you love, because once you are passionate about something, then yeah, you just go on and speak a lot about it. That's why I think the dogme method, or the method in which the student is the focus, is so cool or so valuable, because then yeah, you can really focus on what the student is speaking. And sometimes with these spinning wheel questions, sometimes the questions are not that good, right? But yeah.
Yeah, but even with the spinning wheel or some, you may with this method, I find it very interesting, this method, because you may end up talking about what interests you, or what you want. For instance, I could have approached this question talking about something that I like. I don't know. I'm not proud about I answer that, but it could have been different. So uh, maybe we have, with this type of lessons, it may be totally wrong, but at the same time, it easy to. I think it's the teacher who can deal with
Yeah.
this kind of things, when that if it's with a good teacher, it's this is a fantastic method, because he will notice, when there's a specific subject or something that isn't working, and switch off to another subject, or to lead the conversation to another place. So let the students express. Again, the objective is to express as you want, to talk as naturally as possible. And I think this is very good, this method, for achieve that,
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
talk. It's again a natural approach to learning. I find it very interesting, this method.
Yeah, and then on the second part of the life lesson, there is the feedback session. And I find this very useful, because then Zdenek shows you the mistakes, but not always just the mistakes. Sometimes he just shows you useful expressions that you used, and he talks more about it. Or sometimes he gives pronunciation tips. And what I find super cool is, but you can tell me what you think about it, that Zdenek, he lets you give the answer first. So for example, he shows you a sentence and there is a mistake in it, and then you have to correct yourself. And in your case, almost everything, the answer. So you correct yourself. And I think this is huge because
Yeah.
by doing that, you will learn even better.
Yeah, I agree, Daniel, because sometimes we make mistakes without noticing. And those things when we speak in a live lesson, we aren't ourselves. Our level is, if I'm, for instance, if I'm a C1 in such a demanding environment, I became a B2 or a B1. I can't speak as fluently or as confidently, or I won't use as much vocabulary as I would do in other, let's say, less demanding environment. So most of mistakes are mistakes you wouldn't make if you had to answer, a writing or in a, let's say, more comfortable environment. It's very interesting that he gives you the opportunity to correct yourself and you realize that, oh, really? Did I say that? Because you don't notice that you made that mistake. Or sometimes there are slips of the tongue, because you have to talk on the spot about something that maybe you don't have the vocabulary, even you have never talked about that before. You end up correcting yourself, which is amazing because you probably won't make those mistakes again.
And what do you make with the feedback? I mean, do you have a notebook or do you just remember it, or do you have any strategy how you proceed the feedback in itself?
Yeah, I try to write down the mistakes. I have a notebook, and also I use, on my phone, an app to write down vocabulary and expressions, new expressions that I learned. My main inputs are reading, also this kind of lessons. As you know, I love also watching films.
You're a movie
So,
buff.
well, not that much, but I love movies.
Well, that's a movie buff.
And for instance,
No,
really. Well, I thought a buff would be someone who knows a lot about
yeah.
the name of the directors, the actors. I'm not that.
Okay, I see.
I love movies, but I tend to forget about the names of the directors, the actors.
Me too.
Then I write down the expressions. For instance, we were, Daniel, discussing this movie, Don't Look Up. And I remember a scene when they say, a very important scene when Meryl Streep says, when they tell her he's playing the role of the president of the US, and they tell her that a comet will destroy the entire planet. And she says, we will sit tight and assess. And this phrasal verb, the expression sit tight, I didn't know the expression. It's like wait patiently. We have to sit tight. So immediately I wrote down the expression sit tight, and I incorporate in this app to, well, it's a very common, popular app to
Is it
store.
Anki?
It's Quizlet,
Oh, okay, yeah.
Quizlet. So I write down the expression and so that I won't forget. And from time to time, I go back and with this app, you can even listen to the expressions you can practice the.
Yeah, that is cool. Just so that the listeners know, we are actually in the same movie club. And every 2 weeks, we discuss a different movie. And yeah, to me, it's really a great exercise as well. And we don't focus that much on vocabulary, right? Because we just talk together. So it's not focused on the English language per se. It's like a normal discussion. and I kind of like that, and I find it difficult sometimes. So, for instance, with the movie Don't Look Up, most of the people were against the movie, and I liked it. And then it was really hard to discuss it because I don't know, it's just difficult when you know that most of them don't share the same opinion than you, then it's difficult. And even in English, it's not my mother tongue, and
Yeah.
then it becomes more difficult to explain, but it's a good exercise, I must say.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think so. It's a good exercise. And in this, but in this group, I find that I find in this group a very warming environment.
yeah,
Again, I'm not afraid of making mistakes in these talks because we are, well, like a group of friends talking about a movie. It's like when I go to the movie theater, then we always, when I go with my wife, with some friends, and we later on we will go to have dinner together. We will go to a restaurant or a bar to have some beers, that kind of thing, and we will inevitably talk about the movie. So it's like that environment that we are in a very, relaxed environment talking about movies. So I'm not afraid of making that. That's the thing that I like about this discussion. I find it also a very good way of practicing because you are learning without noticing. You are doing real things, the things you would do in your first language. You are doing real things in a second language. We shouldn't be too afraid of making mistakes in that environment.
absolutely. What I find difficult in the movie club is that usually we don't turn our webcam on and we can't see each other. Sometimes it's difficult for me because for me it's easier to have a conversation when I can see the reaction of the other person. But yeah, it's a challenge and a good practice.
Yeah.
And for you, it's not a problem
But,
to not see the other person who is
well,
talking.
sometimes, you know what? I rarely turn on the computer to do that kind of thing because I'm always moving around. I'm not always in my place, so I'm not always at home, or my kids. I have to hide from my kids to do that kind of thing. So it's easier for me to do it with my phone. So
True.
that's why sometimes with my phone, or I don't have a proper Wi-Fi connection. So with my phone, it's better not to turn on the camera. So it would worsen the connection, or be more difficult. So I'm talking with my phone like it's like a phone call, let's say.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what I imagine what people feelings, because we are pretty much the same people. There are the regulars, let's say, who are 5 or 6 of us. So we more or less know each other. So and by the way, it isn't important at all if you like or dislike the movie. I think the approach is to enjoy talking about the movie because we aren't movie critics or something like that. So, in fact, with this movie, I was against in the beginning, but I changed. I told you, well, I will team up with you, Daniel. I will
really nice.
I will play devil's advocate now. And so it doesn't matter because with every movie, especially it is after all an Oscar award winning movie. They are all are good movies in a way. So with this type of movies, also you will find good and not that good things. So maybe there are things that you like, that you enjoyed, and some other things that
Yeah.
you didn't like. So
I have a final topic which I would like to talk with you. And before I will show you an audio clip, which also comes from the first live session or live lesson with Zdenek. So let's take a listen.
But sometimes, Zdenek, I wonder if that kind of input gives you a very, let's say, literary or formal language, different to the way people
People
speak.
Enrique, it really depends on what you read, right? so if you read a lot of non-fiction with dialogues, then I don't think it's a problem. Well, it depends. If it's non-fiction from the 18th century, or obviously the language might have been a bit different.
Because you were talking about your methods and how you would learn English, and you really like to read books, and that was the moment in which you asked Zdenek if it has an influence, if you would have too literary speech. And I've found this a very interesting question, to be honest, because in my opinion, let's say we are reading a fiction book, like, I don't know, like Blade Runner or The Lord of the Rings, or I don't know what, a fantasy book. I think that usually we don't speak like that. So
yeah, of course, of course. I try sometimes. I'm also a fan of science fiction. I love these science fiction novels from the 60s, like Doom by Frank Herbert, that kind of thing. But well, it's or Arthur C. Clarke. It isn't real, you know. It isn't today English, let's say. So sometimes when I pick, I finish this book, I have to pick another one in English, you know. Lately, I try to go for books with more dialogues, you know,
yeah,
books where people talk to each other, so that it's better, I think, for your English. With a very, if you go for, of course, if you go for Shakespeare or something like that, it won't. I don't think it would benefit your English at all. You know, it would be even worse that not reading in English at all. You know, so it's an issue. But on the other hand, you have to read what suits you, what you like, what you enjoy, because it's very important that when I'm reading a book that I don't like, and it happens even in Spanish. When I read a book I don't like, I would throw it away. I won't waste my time struggling or suffering with something I don't enjoy.
Yeah, when I am reading, I want to enjoy myself. So it's entertainment. And at the same time, I can pick up some expressions. And this is fantastic because, I try to read only in English. And to me, it is a huge method because you can read very fast and you can come across vocabulary more often. And you notice when an expression comes again and again, then you notice, okay, this is important. Now I want to learn it by heart. Yeah, to me, it's fantastic. I enjoy it very much.
Yeah. This is mainly or pretty much my method, the reading, but the problem is that it is a passive task.
Yeah.
And all this language, all these expressions, vocab that I learn, then the challenge is to put that into practice, to use it, to when I'm talking, and it's difficult. Sometimes I find a lot of language. I have it on my phone, and when I check it out, because sometimes I group words. You know, for instance, I have here different because what I love about English, about vocab, is it's very precise. There are some topics where you have different words for the same, more or less, but it changes. Each word has a different meaning, or the meaning changes slightly, and for instance, walk. I have different ways to say it, walk or go walking in English. And I wrote down stroll. It's the very, like you are walking with your hands in your pockets, very, quiet or relaxed walk, jaunt. You are walking happily or something like that. Trudge in the snow. uh, uh, stagger, limp, wander, mooch, strut, shuffle. Oh, these are different ways of walking, and each word has a different meaning. It means walk in general, but each word is used in a specific context because are different ways of walking. So then I know this vocab. I have it. I recorded it on my phone, but when it comes to use it, I don't see. I never ever use these words. I never say I'm going for a stroll. Well, I'm going for a walk. I would never, in my real English, in my productive English, let's say, I would never say I'm going for a stroll. I go strolling. I don't know.
But I think it's the same with
It's difficult to.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. I wanted to say, I think that even people in their native language, they don't talk like in the books, because sometimes, this specific vocabulary, people just don't use it, or not so many people are using it to converse with each other.
Yeah, that's why I asked it to Zdenek, because when I read, I learn a lot of vocab like that, and sometimes I wonder, well, what's the point of learning so many words that I would never ever use? So maybe it's a waste of time. But despite that, I love reading, so I will continue with this method because it is free. Let's say. I don't have to put any effort in reading in English because I love reading. So it's like talking about movies or watching a movie. It's learning English for free.
Yeah, excellent.
To me.
I love that. And speaking about words or expressions, do you have a favorite expression that you want to talk about?
Well, a lot. I have a lot of expression. I have a whole archive of English expressions but I don't know I don't know. There are a lot, but I like the expression when you say I lost my train of thought, because it's very visual. When I speak, and it happens to me a lot, since I go from one point to the other. I try to make a point and then I get a bit stuck because I can't find the right word. Sometimes I say I lost my train of thought, and I like this expression because it's very visual. It's like I see like a train discouraging or something like that.
Yeah, and it buys you some time, so maybe you can remember it in the meantime when you're using the expression.
Yeah. Yeah, I say wait a minute, I lost my train of thought. Let me recap or something like that.
Awesome. Do you have another one, maybe? Another expression?
Well, I have, as I told you, an archive of, I have that. Well, I also use sometimes there are little words that are so useful in English. And that's what I also like about the English language, that there are little words that they have a lot of different meanings and are very useful. You can use them like so. there are two letters, S-O. And it is so useful. You can use it in so many contexts. Or when I tend to say also, let alone when I talking about something to emphasize that I'm talking about something worse, and I want to give an example about that, and I say, well, this is worse. So let alone this other thing, let alone it's even worse.
Yeah.
So it's like small linkers. I don't know how to
Small
how they are
words
called.
with a huge
Yeah.
impact, maybe.
Yeah, maybe maybe like linking words, small words that are fit very well to link ideas or phrases. Or I love this kind
Yeah.
of
I like, for example, the little word again. When someone is explaining something really long, then
yeah.
a pause, and then someone can say again, and then he explains more in detail, or just to emphasize. So the person wants to
Yeah.
emphasize that he explained it before, but again he wants to go even more deeper and
Yeah.
explain it.
I
Yeah.
use it a lot. I think I've used it 2 or 3 times, this word with you. I use it a lot because I'm very intensive. I don't know if it's correct in English. When I'm making a point, sometimes I'm a bit a pain in the neck. I want to remark it again and again to make clear that I come across and my idea is received.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. It was really great to talk with you. And yeah, maybe you can tell us, when will the next live lesson be? Do you have a date already, or?
No, I don't have an appointment because lately I'm a bit busy, and you know what is easier? The reading, the other things. Because you have to do an appointment for a specific date, a specific day, that kind of thing. But I have to talk to Zdenek because I enjoyed it very much. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. But only members can join, because you have to be a member of the Achievers Chamber, I think it is called.
Yeah. So I think I go for it in the near future. Yeah, I think so. It's interesting.
Yeah, I was also thinking about that. The thing is, about being busy, right? Because when you have so many things going on, sometimes it's not wise to start another project. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My approach to English is like a hobby, because I love it,
Yeah.
And I don't want it to become a burden or a task or a job, like something demanding that I'm stressed about. That to me is like a hobby, like something that I enjoy. So
Yeah,
sometimes it's easier with passive tasks like reading. You can do it wherever, or listening to podcasts, because you switch on your podcast app when you are doing the washing or the shopping, that kind of thing. And sometimes, since there are so many podcasts, sometimes I'm always catching up, because I love this podcast, but it's been a while since I listened to the latest episode. So then I go again for that specific podcast, and it's there are 3 or 5 new episodes. You are always catching up, and it's sometimes it's a bit stressing, to be up to date with your favorite podcast, since there are so many.